The note appeared beside Morgan Ellis's table before she had spoken to anyone. Darcy Lang saw it flash across the seating tablet while she stood at the service station of the Alder Room, one hand resting on a stack of folded linen, the other hovering above the screen. Table conduct concern. Monitor discreetly. A quiet frown crossed Darcy's face. The table waited in the civic private room near the back wall, beneath a row of framed black and white photographs of Riverton mayors shaking hands with governors, donors, and men whose names still marked buildings across the city. The reservation had been confirmed. The guest had arrived alone. She sat quietly, placed her phone face down beside the water glass, and asked only that her party be shown back when he arrived. There had been no raised voice, no complaint, no conduct that required monitoring. Across the room, Morgan Ellis sat with her hands folded beside the menu she had not opened. Strangers often guessed her younger than she was, and she had learned to let that misjudgment work until it no longer served her. Her dark blazer was plain, her shoes were low, her hair was cropped close, clean, and natural. Nothing about her announced importance. That was useful sometimes. Tonight, it also felt dangerous. A server passed Paige Harlan's table with a silver bucket of champagne before Morgan's water had been refilled. Paige had arrived with 3 friends, their easy laughter and bright chatter filling the space like people who expected any room to adjust itself around them. The host had greeted her by name before she reached the stand. "Miss Harlan, of course. Your usual room is open." Paige had not thanked him. She had only glanced toward the civic room, then toward Morgan, and paused long enough for Darcy to notice. Now the note rested on the tablet. Morgan had seen the pause. She had seen the water glass still empty. She had seen how the host's smile warmed for Paige and cooled into cool procedure when it reached her own table. None of it surprised her. That was the trouble with certain rooms. They never had to say what they believed. They simply arranged it through distance, timing, glassware, and who was expected to explain themselves. Paige crossed the room with a champagne flute in her hand. She was polished and bright in the way campaign photographs preferred. Her father, Mayor Victor Harlan, smiled from banners all over Riverton that season above the words, "Moving Forward Together." Paige carried the family name like a key that opened every door. She stopped at Morgan's table. "I think there may have been a seating mix-up," Paige said, her voice light, almost helpful. "This room is usually held for a private civic circle." Morgan looked up. The room was confirmed. Paige smiled a little. "I'm sure someone told you that." The friends behind her went quiet in a way that was not silence. It was permission. Darcy stood by the service station, tablet still in her hand. She looked at the note again. The timestamp sat beneath it, small and exact. It had been entered after Paige walked in, before she ever reached Morgan's table. Morgan's eyes shifted briefly to Darcy. "When was that note added?" she asked. Darcy's fingers tightened around the tablet. Paige's smile thinned. "Excuse me?" Morgan did not repeat herself. She simply waited. That waiting did more damage than an argument would have. Paige was used to apologies rushing in to fill the space after her questions. She was used to nervous laughter, managers appearing, people explaining themselves into smaller and smaller shapes. Morgan gave her none of that. "This is a difficult room to manage," Paige said, still pleasant, still careful. "People come here for privacy, for a certain standard." Morgan folded her napkin and placed it beside her plate. "I am waiting for someone." Paige's eyes moved to the empty chair across from her. "Of course you are." It was soft. It was almost nothing. It was enough. A man near the bar looked over and then looked down at his drink. One of Paige's friends lifted her phone, not high enough to be obvious, just high enough. The host had vanished toward the front. Darcy did not move. Paige leaned closer. "Maybe you should wait in the front lounge until your party is actually here." Morgan looked at the tablet in Darcy's hand again. "Your system already decided I was a concern," she said, "before I became one." For a second, Paige's face changed. Not fear, not yet. Just the flash of someone hearing a locked door click from the wrong side. Then her hand came up. The slap was short and sharp, the sound flat and final. The room seemed to stop breathing around it. Morgan turned slightly with the impact, then returned to stillness. She did not touch Paige. She did not stand. She raised 2 fingers to the corner of her mouth, saw the faint red on them, and set her hand back on the table. Paige breathed hard once, her palms still lifted. No one spoke. Morgan reached into her jacket, took out her phone, and dialed. When the call connected, her voice stayed low. "Vanessa, move the file tonight." Paige went back to her table as if returning to a seat she had never really left. One of her friends touched her wrist and whispered something too soft for the room to hear. Paige gave a small laugh, lifted her champagne, and drank. Her hand was steady now. That was what Morgan noticed first. Not regret, but recovery. The dining room began breathing again in fragments. Forks touched plates. A chair scraped. Someone near the bar murmured into a phone. The private room did what rooms like that often did when power had embarrassed itself. It looked for a way to make the embarrassment belong to someone else. The manager arrived with a folded napkin in one hand and a tight smile on his face. "Miss Ellis," he said, keeping his voice low, "perhaps we should step into the front lounge and discuss what happened." Morgan looked up at him. "What are you discussing?" His smile held. "There seems to have been an exchange." There was no exchange. Behind him, Darcy Lang stood with the seating tablet against her chest. She did not speak yet, but she did not leave either. Paige's table had gone quiet enough to listen. The manager lowered his voice another inch. "We want to avoid disturbing the other guests." Morgan's cheek still burned. She placed her phone face down beside her water glass. "The disturbance happened when she crossed the room," she said, "not when I stayed seated." The manager blinked. He had expected anger. Anger would have helped him. Anger could be entered, softened, balanced against Paige's name, and turned into a neutral sentence by morning. Darcy looked down at the tablet. The note was still there. Table conduct concern, monitor discreetly. The timestamp was still there too. A second line appeared beneath it. Incident review pending. Guest interaction unclear. Darcy's thumb froze over the screen. The second line had not come from her account. At Paige's table, one of the friends leaned toward her and showed her a phone. Paige read the message and looked toward the front door. That was when Vanessa Caldwell walked in. No raised voice, no rush, no dramatic sweep of bodies. Just Vanessa in a dark blazer, followed by two field staff carrying slim cases, moving with the patient focus of people who had already been briefed. The host stepped forward, saw the credentials, and stepped aside. Vanessa did not look at Paige. She came straight to Morgan's table. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine." Vanessa's eyes moved briefly to Morgan's cheek. She accepted the answer, but did not believe it completely. "Did Gavin arrive?" "Not yet." Vanessa set a sealed folder on the table. "The warrant is signed." That changed the room more than the slap had. Paige's champagne glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Morgan did not touch the folder. "Then we wait for Gavin." They waited in charged silence. During that time, Paige sent several messages. The manager disappeared twice toward the service hallway. Darcy moved to the back station, opened the tablet menu, and exported the service log before anyone could ask her not to. She marked the reason carefully: incident sequence preservation. Gavin Shaw arrived through the side entrance, not the front. He was a narrow man in an old Navy suit, carrying a small envelope in one hand. His face looked worn in the way of people who had spent too long knowing something true while standing alone. He sat beside Morgan. "I brought the drive," he said. "And the statement?" He nodded. "Signed." Vanessa opened a chain of custody pouch. Gavin placed the encrypted drive inside. The small sound of the seal closing made Paige look away. For the first time all night, Morgan saw fear reach her. Not because of the slap, but because of the file. Before long, the first calls began to come in. A restaurant owner asking whether the incident could be described as a misunderstanding. A campaign aide asking who had seen what. A message to Gavin, careful and polished, reminding him of pension reviews and confidentiality obligations. Another message reached Darcy through the manager. "Adjust the note. Remove speculation. Call it mutual." Darcy did not answer. She sent the export to Vanessa's office. Soon after, Riverton learned there would be a joint oversight hearing. Mayor Victor Harlan arrived in a charcoal suit and campaign blue tie, smiling for cameras outside the Civic Center. Paige sat behind him, pale and still. He spoke first. Reform, service, political attack, the city moving forward. Then Morgan stood. She placed one document map on the projector. The first line filled the screen. Riverton Water Renewal Contract, original estimate, hidden from council. Mayor Victor Harlan sat at the respondents' table with his hands folded, his blue campaign tie centered, his expression arranged into patient disappointment. He had spoken for some time before Morgan stood. Reform, service, political timing, outside interests, the same calm phrases he had used on podiums across Riverton for years. Morgan did not answer his speech. She opened the file. The hearing room was full. Reporters lined the back wall. Council members sat beneath the raised seal of the city. Paige Harlan was in the gallery, dressed in pale cream, her hands tight in her lap. She did not look at Morgan's cheek. The mark had faded. The video had not. Morgan began with the estimate. Not with Paige. Not with the restaurant. Not with herself. She showed the engineering assessment that placed the water renewal work far below the final award. She showed the council packet that removed the original estimate. She showed the final contract, then the consulting firms, then the payment routes. Each document had a date. Each transfer had a receiving account. Each company had a registered agent, a campaign donor, a board appointee, or a relative close enough to make the room shift in its seats. No one interrupted her. That was how Morgan knew they were listening. Mayor Harlan kept his face still until Gavin Shaw's signed statement appeared. The statement named the meeting where the estimate was removed. It named the aide who told him the mayor's office wanted cleaner numbers. It named the week Gavin was reassigned to a basement office with no staff. Morgan clicked once. The next image was not financial. It was the service log from the outer room, table conduct concern, monitored discreetly. The timestamp appeared beneath it. Morgan looked at the committee chair, Isabel Monroe. This was entered before I approached anyone, before I raised my voice, before Ms. Harlan crossed the room. It matters because the habit is the same. Write the conclusion first. Force the record to carry it later. Paige looked down. Harlan's attorney leaned toward him. Harlan did not move. Isabel called the final witness after a short recess. Julian Reyes walked to the table carrying a tablet in a black case. He was quiet, almost plain, the kind of man a powerful office could overlook for years because he was always in the corner taking notes. Vanessa Caldwell stood near the sidewall. She said nothing. Julian connected the tablet to the room's audio system. The clip lasted less than a minute. Harlan's voice filled the chamber, not polished for cameras, not softened for voters, brisk, specific. He named the contractor. He named the consulting schedule. He named the amount to be routed and the account that had handled the earlier harbor project. When the recording ended, no one clapped. No one gasped. The silence was heavier than both. Harlan's attorney asked for a recess. Isabel granted it. Harlan rose with his legal team around him. He passed the gallery without looking at Paige. She watched him go, and whatever remained of the room she had grown up believing in went with him. In the days that followed, two major donors suspended support. Council allies began issuing careful statements about accountability. Before long, Harlan's campaign office stood dark. He resigned in writing. There was no apology in the statement. But the record did not stop at resignation. Vanessa Caldwell's office opened a federal recovery action against the companies tied to the water contract. The city froze pending payments to 3 consulting firms named in Morgan's presentation. The contract file was transferred to an independent monitor, and every invoice connected to the water renewal project was pulled back for review. For the first time, the money had to answer for itself. Riverton reopened every water and infrastructure contract awarded under Harlan's administration. The Ethics Commission, which had spent years existing mostly on paper, was reconstituted with subpoena authority. A public procurement ledger went live on the city website showing estimates, scoring sheets, conflict disclosures, and contract changes. The original water contract was rebid under public supervision. The new award came in far lower than the old one. The difference became the basis for a ratepayer credit fund for residents whose water bills had carried the cost of inflated work. Gavin Shaw received a clearing letter, pension credit restoration, and formal whistleblower protection. Then the hearing returned to the room where the first lie had been written. The Alder Room lost its preferred civic venue status pending review. No city board dinner, donor reception, or public-private event could be booked there until its incident log protocol was rewritten. Staff notes could no longer be edited by guest-facing managers after a complaint began. Every conduct concern required a named employee, a timestamp, and the specific observed behavior. Darcy Lang's exported service log entered the hearing record as a small example of a larger disease. She was not praised as a hero. She was simply recorded as the person who kept the sequence intact when everyone else wanted it softened. Paige's punishment was quieter, and it lasted longer. The Civic Host Committee removed her name before the next fundraiser. The museum gala returned her sponsorship check. Her father's campaign donors stopped taking her calls. The friends who had laughed at Morgan's table became careful strangers. The slap remained online, but the worst thing was what it now represented. Not one spoiled daughter losing control, but a family culture that had mistaken access for innocence. Through counsel, Page signed a civil acknowledgement of the assault. Morgan did not ask for money. The settlement went to a community legal aid fund that helped residents challenge improper fines, housing denials, and city billing errors. Page met Morgan once, weeks later, in a quiet coffee shop far from the donor rooms. "I'm sorry," Page said. Morgan studied her for a moment. "The apology matters less than what you stop doing after it." That was all she gave her. As her time in Riverton drew to a close, city crews removed the blue campaign banners from the lampposts downtown. The slogan came down in strips of vinyl and metal clips. That same morning, the procurement ledger stayed online. The banners came down first. The record stayed up. If a story shows you a record being written before the truth is heard, pay attention to who benefits from that order. This is a fictional story created for storytelling purposes.